The rain fell over Naples like a prayer that no one dared to finish. Matteo Romano, the man once feared by every rival family, walked alone down the narrow cobblestone street, a bouquet of white lilies trembling in his hand. No bodyguards, no guns, just a man haunted by the ghosts of the men he buried and the love he lost trying to be good. He stopped at the church door, dripping wet, and whispered her name, Elena. It had been 10 years since he last saw her, 10 years since she ran from him the night he burned his empire to the ground. Now she was back in the same city he once ruled as the teacher of his son. He didn't come for forgiveness. He came because redemption had her eyes, and they were staring back at him through the candlelight of the chapel. But in the shadows behind the pews, someone else was watching, a man with a scar across his cheek, holding a silenced gun wrapped in rosary beads. Matteo's fingers brushed over the lilies as he whispered, "If this is how it ends, at least let it end in peace." The candle flickered. A single tear rolled down his cheek. And then the church door creaked open. "You shouldn't have come back, Matteo." Her voice cut through the silence like memory reborn in pain. He looked at her, the woman he once ruined, the woman who still held his soul. "And maybe yours too. Because tell me, if redemption knocked, would you open the door? Welcome to Hidden Mafia Story, where every sin has a heartbeat, and every love leaves a scar." The next morning, the city was wrapped in fog, the kind that makes even saints look like sinners. The bells from Santa Lucia rang across the harbor, and in the quiet hum of the streets, Matteo Romano watched his son walk into the school courtyard. Luca, 10 years old, his mother's eyes, his father's silence. Elena was already there, standing by the classroom window. Her hair, dark as midnight coffee, fell over her shoulder as she adjusted the papers on her desk. She hadn't seen Matteo yet. Not as him, not as the man who once made the city kneel. He stayed by the car, watching through the drizzle. Every movement of hers seemed like a memory repeating, the way she tucked a strand of hair, the way her fingers trembled before every decision. Then their eyes met. It lasted 3 seconds. But in those 3 seconds, 10 years of pain, love, and unspoken apologies screamed louder than any gunshot Matteo had ever fired. He turned away first, because that's what cowards do when they've finally met someone brave enough to forgive them. That evening, Matteo sat in the confession booth. It wasn't about God. It was about guilt. He spoke softly into the screen. "I saw her again." The priest's voice came, steady and old. "And what did you feel?" "Like I died 10 years ago, and she's the only one who remembered to bury me." There was silence, then a click, not of a pen, of a gun. Matteo froze, a low whisper from the other side. "The past has finally found you, Romano." He kicked open the door, the bullet slicing through the wooden frame, splinters flying like fireflies. He tackled the shooter, the scarred man from the church, slamming him against the altar. Candles scattered. Shadows danced. The scent of blood mixed with holy wine. Matteo's hand tightened around the gun, and he growled through his teeth. "Who sent you?" The man spat blood. "You did this to yourself when you tried to be good." And with that, he bit down on a cyanide capsule. Gone before Matteo could blink. Hours later, Elena stood by her apartment balcony, phone in hand, staring at the message that had just arrived. "Unknown number, he's alive, and they know about the boy." Her heart stopped. Her legs trembled. She whispered, "No." But before she could call anyone, headlights flared outside her window, Matteo's car. He came up the stairs, soaked in rain and silence. She opened the door before he could knock. He looked broken, not the monster she remembered, but a man on the edge of losing everything again. Elena! She stepped back. Why now, Matteo? Why bring danger back into my life? He looked at her, voice shaking. Because the danger never left. And because his voice broke, he's our son, Elena. The words hung in the air like thunder that refused to die. She covered her mouth, tears falling freely now. No, you promised he'd never know. I'm not here to tell him. I'm here to protect him. Then came a sound. Tires screeching. A car door slamming. Elena's hand gripped his arm. They're here. He pulled out his gun, old, silver, engraved with a cross. Stay behind me. Outside, men in black coats moved through the rain. And in that frozen moment, with thunder rolling above Naples, the ghosts of Matteo's past returned to collect their debt. He whispered, if this is the end, then at least I'll die in front of her, not behind her. But maybe fate had other plans. Because from the alleyway, another shadow appeared, smaller, quicker, and the voice of a child called out, Dad! The world stopped. Elena screamed. Matteo turned, and the first gunshot of redemption echoed through the city. He tried to save them from his past, but some sins don't forgive, they remember. Subscribe, because in the next story, love might not come to save you. The gunshot split the air like lightning breaking through glass. Matteo spun around, too late. The bullet had missed him, but not by much. It struck the cross behind the altar, scattering shards of gold and stone. Through the smoke, Matteo saw him, a man he once called brother. Luca Moretti, the old underboss, the one who had stayed behind when Matteo vanished a decade ago. And now he was here, gun still smoking, eyes cold as marble. You should have stayed dead, Romano, he said. The city was quieter without you. Matteo stepped forward, every nerve screaming. You're working for the old council again? Luca smirked. No, I am the council now. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy with history, with all the names they buried together. Matteo's hand tightened around his weapon. This isn't about me. Oh, it's always been about you. You left me with your mess. You left her with your ghost. He glanced toward the apartment window, where Elena stood frozen, clutching her phone. Matteo's jaw tensed. Leave her out of this. But Luca only smiled. You left her in this when you left your bloodline behind. He fired again, Matteo dove, pulling Elena to the ground. Glass shattered, and the room filled with the acrid scent of gunpowder and rain. Luca's voice echoed from below. You can't protect her and the boy. Not this time. Hours later, the apartment was silent except for the dripping of rain. The walls were torn, the lights flickering. Matteo cleaned the wound on his shoulder, a graze, nothing more. Elena sat opposite him, hands trembling, staring at the gun in his lap. Her voice was soft, cracking like old porcelain. You said he'd never find us. Matteo didn't look up. He wasn't supposed to. Then how did he know? He finally met her eyes that still burned with the ghost of their past. I told no one where you were, he whispered. Elena swallowed. Then someone close to you did? The realization hit him like a knife. There was only one person who knew, Father Enzo, the priest from the confessional. He stood, pacing, fury and fear fighting in his chest. If Enzo talked, Elena rose too. Matteo, you can't go back there. He turned to her, voice low and hard. I already did. She froze. What do you mean? He looked at her tired, haunted. That wasn't confession. It was a warning. Elena's breath caught. What did he say? Matteo stepped closer. He said the old blood is rising again. And they want what I took. Elena's eyes widened. What did you take? He hesitated, then whispered the oath. Meanwhile, across town, in a candlelit cathedral basement, Father Enzo knelt before Luca Moretti. Chains clinked as Luca circled him, the echo of footsteps bouncing off the stone. You protected him once, Luca said softly. Now you'll bring him to me. Enzo shook his head weakly. He's not the man you think he is anymore. Luca leaned in, voice venomous. He's exactly the man I need him to be. A legend that dies twice. Back at Elena's apartment, Matteo loaded his final magazine. I need to end this before it reaches him, he said, nodding toward the room where their son slept. Elena stepped forward, tears streaming. You think killing the man's it? It just starts it over again. Matteo paused, gun halfway raised. You think I don't know that? His voice cracked. Every night, I dream of the men I killed. Of you. Of him. He looked away, jaw trembling. But dreams don't protect the living. Elena moved closer, touching his hand. Then let me come with you. He froze. No. You need someone to remind you what you're fighting for. Elena. Matteo, if you walk into that darkness alone again, you'll never come back. Her voice broke. Please don't leave us a second time. For the first time in years, the gun in Matteo's hand felt heavier than his sins. He lowered it. Then headlights flared outside again. The sound of boots. The smell of smoke. Matteo turned to Elena and whispered, It's already too late. The city that made him a killer is calling him home again. Subscribe because when Chapter 3 arrives, redemption will bleed. The night burned with silence. Smoke curled around the old cathedral like memory made real thick, slow, suffocating. Matteo stood in the courtyard, rain tracing silver lines down his face. The rosary in his palm was cracked, soaked in blood, Father Enzo's blood. The priest's last words still echoed in his head. The one you trust least will carry your legacy. He didn't understand what it meant. Not yet. But he was done running. It was time to finish what the city had started. Inside the cathedral, Luca waited. Candles flickered across his face, half shadow, half flame. Around him, the old council's insignia glowed faintly on the walls, a serpent biting its own tail. 10 years, Luca said as Matteo entered, gun drawn. 10 years of ghosts. And now here you are again, standing in front of me like it was yesterday. Matteo's voice was low, almost tender. Yesterday, you were my brother. Luca smiled sadly. And today, I'm your mirror. He raised his gun. You left the throne, Matteo. I didn't steal it. You gave it away. Their eyes met, not as enemies, but as two men too broken to forgive. The first shot cracked through the air. Then another. Wood splintered. Candles shattered. Blood hit marble. Matteo fell to one knee, clutching his side, the same place he'd been shot the night he disappeared. Luca approached slowly, breathing heavy, gun steady. You should have stayed dead. But Matteo smiled, a bitter, knowing smile. I did. With his last strength, he pressed a hidden detonator beneath the pew. The cathedral shook. Flames roared through the walls like trapped angels breaking free. Luca stumbled back, eyes wide. What have you done? Matteo rose, limping toward the doorway as fire swallowed the altar. I ended the council, he said, voice trembling. and the ghost that owned it. Luca tried to follow, but the roof caved in, stone and fire consuming the serpent that once ruled the city. Outside, the rain fell harder. Elena waited by the car, clutching their son close. Her eyes widened when she saw him bloodied, burned, but alive. He staggered toward her, collapsing into her arms. For a moment, the world stood still, just breath, rain, and the faint sound of a child whispering, "Papa." Matteo looked down at his son. His lips curved into the smallest smile. "You look like her," he said softly. Elena brushed the ash from his cheek. "And you still don't know how to say goodbye." He laughed weakly. "That's because this time, I don't have to." Sirens wailed in the distance, but he didn't care. The empire was gone. The city was bleeding, yes, but free. He pressed the rosary into his son's hand. "When you grow up," he whispered, "don't follow me. Rewrite me." The boy nodded, tears mixing with rain. Matteo leaned back against the car, looking up at the burning skyline, the empire he built, dying beautifully under the storm. Then, finally, he closed his eyes. Weeks later, a small cafe by the river. Elena sits with her son, the city rebuilding behind them. He's holding a small notebook, the same one Matteo used to write his rules. The boy flips to the first page. In Matteo's handwriting, faint but clear, it reads, "The last oath is love, not loyalty, not blood, just love." Elena smiles through her tears. And somewhere beyond the rain, the bell of the old cathedral rings one last time hollow, beautiful, final. He didn't die a legend. He died a man who kept his last promise. Subscribe, because in the next story, love will rise from the ashes of his empire.